Bad Mechs, the Vulcan, written by Sean of Sarna.net, the greatest wiki there is. Read by Shrapnel.
You're gonna be fine, I'm telling you. Dex has got you covered with a real Star League mech. You'll eat this Drek dropout for breakfast.
Tychon's words didn't do much to assuage Vic's growing unease. He needed this fight to go well. Dex had promised him to have his arena license reinstated if he could beat Matsumoto's Panther in an underground and highly illegal duel. Dex had even offered his own mech for the fight. All he had to do was win. And yet, something didn't feel right. It wasn't the fact he was dealing with perhaps the lowest rung of Solaris society. Vic was used to shady characters like Tychon. It was the fact that Dex had offered his own mech. Never mind the fact it was supposedly from the days of the fabled Star League. Everyone said that. Everyone forgot that there were just as many shambling junk piles in the Star League as there were today. Nobody at this level lent their mechs out, especially when they were already doing a huge favour. Least of all kingpins like Dex. Vic crossed his arms and looked out the hover limo's window. "I'll believe it when I see it," he said, half under his breath. It didn't take long to reach the makeshift arena on the outskirts of nowhere. A crowd had already gathered in the bleachers, protected by a sparking net that looked like it couldn't stop a fly, let alone an autocannon shell. Vic knew the civilian casualties weren't uncommon at these fights. He'd already written half of them off. The hover limo parked right next to the gantries where two dark colossi stood. One was a Panther, but the other was a mech that Vic had never seen before. It was taller than the Panther, but far more gangly, with long, thin limbs and a cockpit that seemed to erupt from the machine's wide shoulders. Vic could make out the muzzle brake of a light autocannon, and a right arm with the telltale scorch marks of flamers, but it was too dark to make out the rest. "Get suited up, hero," Tychon mocked as he tossed Vic his beat-up Neuro helmet. "Time to put on a show." The next 10 minutes were all downhill. Vic was dismayed to find out that his Star League mech had just a 60mm autocannon as its main armament. The flamer might be useful if he could get close, but he only had a single medium laser and a piddly machine gun when his autocannon's ammo bin ran dry. Worse, he had no hands, so close combat brawling was out too. The jump jets were a bonus and the mech felt reasonably nimble after taking it through a 5-minute shakedown, but he was hardly confident his firepower would surpass his opponent. The other 5 minutes proved his suspicions correct. The Vulcan, a name he'd only discovered after cycling through his diagnostic displays, had less armour than the Panther. That discovery was made apparent after Matsumoto's PPC sheared off his left arm at the shoulder. The arm only contained his machine gun, but it was an arm down when he'd barely pockmarked the Panther's armoured hide. Vic fired his autocannon, scoring minor hits across the Panther's chest. Meanwhile, Vic's damage display showed several areas where PPC blasts had ruptured his wiry mech's armour. His only hope was to close the distance, get underneath the PPC's minimum range, and use his flamer to force Matsumoto into shutdown. Kicking his Vulcan into gear, Vic charged forward in a slight zigzag, firing his autocannon wildly as he went. Most of the shots missed, but Matsumoto's did not. Another PPC blast removed his right arm, while a second punched straight through the Vulcan's chest to nick the engine shielding. Immediately, the Vulcan's normally temperate cockpit became a veritable sauna, and his forward momentum slowed to a crawl. Vic couldn't hear it, but the crowd roared as the Vulcan seemed to stagger forward after a mortal blow. A few more defiant plinks from his autocannon merely bounced off the Panther's scowling feline face as the crowd jeered. Then the Panther let loose a flight of SRMs. 3 erupted all around the Vulcan's cockpit, but one slipped right through the rents in the 40-ton machine's armour to touch off the remaining autocannon rounds. The resulting explosion killed both Vic and 46 fans who were cheering right up until the shockwave blew the bleachers apart. The bizarrely shaped Vulcan is a mech made purely by necessity. In the closing years of the Ameris Civil War, the Star League Defense Force found itself fighting in the highly populated urban centers of the Terran hegemony. Ill-equipped for urban fighting, Alexander Kerensky ordered Mather Techno Inc. of the recently liberated Northwind to produce a mech made to combat dug-in infantry, the most common threat faced by mechs when fighting in cities. What Mather Techno came back with was quickly nicknamed the Scarecrow by SLDF mech warriors. Tall and wiry for 40 tons, the VL-2T Vulcan also came with an odd assortment of weapons designed specifically to root out infantry. Its primary weapon was a 60mm Armstrong autocannon II, which was supported by a Firestorm flamer and a Sperry Browning machine gun. The mech's most powerful weapon, a single medium laser, was most often reserved for light armoured vehicles. The Vulcan's first combat action came during Operation Liberation, the Battle for Terra. Primarily assigned to the SLDF's volunteer regiments, the Vulcan quickly earned a reputation for being an effective city fighter. However, with only 5 tons of armour and an arsenal of light weapons, the Vulcan was vulnerable to other mechs or even heavy armoured vehicles. In cases where the Vulcan found itself overmatched, a top speed of 97 kph and 6 jump jets theoretically allowed clever pilots to escape, but after years of bitter fighting, few Vulcan pilots opted for retreat during the Terran liberation. As Mather Techno's first and only mech, the Vulcan also suffered from other design flaws beyond its armament. Without hands, the Vulcan was especially vulnerable to the sort of melee combat commonly found in urban settings. It also made the Vulcan less useful in non-combat scenarios and made it difficult to extract itself from rubble without damaging its machine gun or flamer. The light autocannon was supposed to be a multi-purpose weapon, but it was most often employed against hardened structures where the flamer and machine gun proved ineffective. After Terra fell, the Vulcan temporarily found itself a weapon without a war. Luckily, Mather Techno soon found itself flooded with orders as every great house frantically built up its arsenal in preparation for what would become the Succession Wars. This resulted in the proliferation of the Vulcan across the Innisphere, although their numbers would dwindle after Mather Techno's factory was destroyed in the first few months of the First Succession War. With its factory destroyed, Mather Techno was forced to sell the design to be produced under license by both Coventry Metalworks and Nimakachi Fusion Products Limited. This made the Vulcan most numerous in the Lyran Commonwealth and the Free Worlds League. In contrast, House Leo had the fewest number of Vulcans after the planet Sapo, where the majority of the Capellan Vulcans were stationed, was lost to House Marek during the Second Succession War. House Davion had a large stockpile of spare parts keeping its Vulcans operational, which were mostly the VL-5T variant. Introduced a year after the VL-2T, the 5T sacrificed the 60mm autocannon in favour of 3 additional medium lasers, 2 more tons of armour and 2 extra heat sinks. This version of the Vulcan was far more effective at engaging mechs and other armoured targets, and proved instrumental in retaking Kentaris 4 during the First Succession War. It wasn't until the recovery of the Helm memory core that new Vulcan variants started to be produced. The VT5M from Nimakachi Fusion Products replaced the autocannon with a large pulse laser, upgraded the laser to a medium pulse laser, and upgraded the heat sinks to doubles. Endo steel chassis were used to make room for the additional firepower and an extra heat sink. Production of this variant would run from 3052 until 3069, when Nimakachi's plant on Temataji was destroyed by a pirate band known as the Order of the Faithful, a group unwittingly controlled by the word of Blake. The VT6M, produced just before the factory was destroyed, upgraded the 5M's arsenal with an ER medium laser and a light Gauss rifle with 2 tons of ammo. Only 30 examples of this variant were produced before the factory's destruction, and most of those were captured by the word of Blake. With the word of Blake's de facto takeover of the Free Worlds League, the VT6C arose from the ashes of the Nimakachi's plant. This variant replaced the VT5M's lasers for an ER large laser, an ER medium laser, and a C3I computer, and replaced the single machine gun with a trio of light machine guns linked in a machine gun array. On the Lyran side, the VT-5S replaced the reliable Pitband 240 engine with an extra light version, added ferrofibrous armour and case for additional protection, and mask for a temporary top speed of 129 kph. The lighter engine also allowed the Armstrong autocannon to be replaced by a much larger Ultra Autocannon 5. Unlike the Marek variant, the 5S would remain in production and even see a sub-variant upgrade produced during the Jihad. This variant, called the VT-5SR, replaced the Ultra AC-5 with a plasma rifle and 2 additional heatsinks. Following the Jihad, the Vulcan faced stiff competition from various Omni-Mechs sporting anti-personnel configurations, and the Republic disarmament meant that most militaries preferred to keep these adaptable designs over a dedicated infantry fighter like the Vulcan. With sales collapsing, Coventry and Nimikachi held a technical summit to redesign the Vulcan for the modern era. The result was the VL-7T. This entirely revamped Vulcan was armed with a plasma rifle, heavy machine gun, heavy flamer, and an ER medium laser. A 240 XL engine and light ferrofibrous armour allowed for the additional armament, all of which was linked to a targeting computer. Cheaper than competing Omni-Mechs, the VL-7T is the perfect design to defeat all sorts of armoured infantry. The targeting computer ensures locks are maintained on squirrely targets such as elementals, while the tried, tested and true trio of flamer, machine gun and laser ensure the lightly armoured and unarmoured infantry can be cut down in droves. Today, the VL-7T is one of the top-selling mechs for both companies, in no small part due to the prevalence of infantry on the modern battlefield. However, that may not be the case forever. As infantry losses mount due to the deadly design, commanders may rethink their tactics to favour mechs once again. When that happens, the Vulcan will undoubtedly fall back on hard times. Hello folks, it's Shrapnel here. Thank you for listening to Bad Mechs the Vulcan. It's not a mech that I've used personally. It's probably not a mech that I would use, because, well, let's be honest, it looks like it sucks. The Jihad variant with the plasma rifles is looking interesting, but the ones before that just seem like ovens on legs. Yes, it's quick and it's got jump jets, but I don't think 5 tons of armour is going to cut it that well, do you? I'd much rather take the Panther, to be honest. I know how tough Panthers are, and they can dish the punishment out. But maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments below if you've got a story about the Vulcan, or you know something I don't. Maybe I'll take it in the future, who knows. Let me know. And as ever, like, subscribe, hit the notification icon, drop a comment below, and of course, go and read Sarna. Go get lost there, folks, and I'll catch you on the flip side. I've been Shrapnel. Bye.